everybody, welcome back to the ONESREADY podcast. You are in the team room, and we've got Aaron with us, and we also have Command Chief Tom Schaefer. So, Tom, we're chiefs, whatever. You're in the team room. We don't typically use rank unless they're trying to, unless it's CMSAF or unless it's somebody else that, can just destroy me on active duty. So I don't think you can destroy me.
I cannot.
Because you got to kill my name first, and then you can kill me. But welcome to the podcast. You're in the team room. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, because you have quite an awesome upbringing. I mean, you're a TACP by trade, but I don't want to ruin it. So go right into it, Tom. Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I was born in 1975. Let's see. I come from. I'm not a military brat. A lot of people mention that they grew up with the military, but I do have a family heritage of military service. My father was in World War II with the 101st. His first action was Operation Market Garden. I had an uncle who was a B-26 bomber pilot in World War II in Korea. Retired as a colonel in the Air Force. Happy 75th birthday, because he transitioned when the Air Force started. My nephew's in the Marine Corps. My stepson's in the Navy. My wife is a active duty Chief Master Sergeant. So that kind of propelled me, is really my path in life, to go in the military. TACP by trade, as Peaches said. Did that my whole career. And actually leads me to kind of a funny thing. Being a command chief in the Air Force, you would expect I'd have a little bit more Air Force base experience. But really, I've only been stationed on 2 Air Force bases, Kunsan and Nellis a few times. But I had to learn steep power curve for learning the true day-to-day functions of a large Air Force base when I first got the job as the operations group superintendent on Nellis back in the day. So yeah, I'm the 57th Wing Command Chief. My boss is Brigadier General Goodman, an amazing human being. Team Nellis is just an amazing place to work, but that's what brought me to this point right here with you guys.
No, that's awesome.
Well, that's fantastic. I love that as a chief, the 2 assignments where you really had to get your feet underneath you and figure out what was going on were as a chief in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Like that's great for you to. It must have been a wild thing to have like finance troops look at you as an E9 walking into their room, and you're like, sorry, I've never had to do this before. How do I file this piece of paper with the Air Force? And they just kind of look at you and like shake your head.
That's exactly correct. Like, here's one of the weird things. I was already a stripe wearing chief for about a year when my wife, I met her. And this was before we were married, obviously. I just met her. And she invited me to go to a chief recognition ceremony happening at her base that she was invited to speak at. And I'm like, oh, what's a chief recognition ceremony? And then she's like, what do you mean? You had one? I go, no, I didn't. I don't know what that is. Because that's a normal thing on an Air Force base, but I'd never heard of it or experienced it. So, yeah, being on Army posts my whole career, I learned a lot of Army stuff. I picked up on a lot of Army heritage, but it was actually very, very noticeable to me throughout my career. Like, I always felt disjointed, if you will, from the Air Force. Like, I was like, what's going on over there on the other side of the fence is what I was always thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are lazy. They are chair force.
Right. Yeah.
These Army guys are onto something. I don't like you guys either.
I'm sure you guys have experienced this, but yeah, you hear that when you're on our side and you see all the memes and everything on Chair Force and everything. But I cannot count, living on Army posts. It's probably in the multiple hundreds, how many Army people came up to me and said, I tried to join the Air Force, but I couldn't. Like, that is a common thread.
Preach.
They don't know that was it, but I mean, that'd be pretty funny to get the numbers on that, actually.
Yeah, I know.
So Kraken, we see problems and we fix problems, right? Like, inside of the AFSC war community, we're really bad. Like, we don't have committees to talk about problems. And then at the end of those meetings, like we don't walk out like doing something. Usually our meetings end with a decision, a table slap, and let's go get this thing. You know, if I see work, I do work. We say that all the time. So you have had the luxury of growing up, you know, in that joint environment. We preach joint everything. Well, you grew up in it. You know, you are Bane in Batman right now. Everybody else was just molded, just adapted to the darkness. You were molded by, you know, living with the Army and being in that joint environment. And now here you are as the command chief out of the 57th Wing, but you're still a TACP at heart. So what problems are you getting after right now? What are some initiatives that you're pushing at the 57th? Because you're like, I see this work. I want to do this work.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things I'm pushing is, as you mentioned, aspect where we have a culture of getting after it. And I think what makes that easy for us to do, because I think you'd all agree, we're satisfied with, hey, it's better to go do than have inaction, right? And we'd rather get to 80% by going and doing now. And then maybe we've got to take a couple steps to fix something we did, because we weren't necessarily speeding, but we were getting after it with the amount of information that we had at the time. And maybe Big Blue tends to take it a little bit slower. And sometimes that just doesn't appeal to people like us, as well as it doesn't get after the problems quick enough for most people. But I think one of the advantages in the aspect war community that lends itself to that kind of behavior is that we have naturally a very connected atmosphere. We're on small teams for the most part. The way our mission type orders and the way we operate in our battle rhythm is in team forms and very intimate and very and a very get after it kind of mindset, where in the Big Blue Air Force it's been starting to kind of bite people in the butt is we're not as connected. We're in larger formations, but you add in the things with different generational culture, COVID, high battle ops rhythm that keeps people disjointed. And what we're noticing is that this decrease in connectedness or this, where human beings are engaging in transactional moments rather than what I would call connected moments. So most of the interactions over the past 10 years after, just rolling out on deployment, coming back, reconstituting back and forth, it's strictly you're here to do this job, and then go home. Whether, as opposed to maybe when we all came in, especially when I came in as an airman, where, man, I had an NCO that was raising me. I'll be honest with you. I had an NCO that was raising me. We were connected on a daily basis, and we're trying to get back to that. So some of my initiatives are to build that connection in between the small teams at the unit level. I learned something on this journey of trying to help units build connections. Is you can't approach it from, hey, the 57th Wing, let's all be intimate and build a connect. It's not going to work. It's too big. It's got to happen at the grassroots level. It's got to be at the team level. I draw on those lessons from the aspect war upbringing about building those connections. So that's one of the big initiatives, trying to reestablish that intimate, for lack of a better term, family type atmosphere that you had in your sections / teams back in the day, or even flights, depending on how big your unit is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
To help promote that.
You hit so many good things, and I want to explore. And I love using this term because it's so deep. I want to unpack some things that you said inside of here. Really unpack them, Chief. The first thing you said there, and I love it, is you talked about mission type orders. And I'm not going to put you on the spot by asking for the doctrinal definition, because I don't think I could give it to myself. But I tell this to my folks is this is the difference between what and how. I tell people all the time, mission type orders are what. This is what I want you to go do. Go take that hill, right? You don't need to tell me how. You need to understand my guidance and intent clearly. You need to understand the commander's guidance and intent clearly. And then you just go execute. It's that decentralized control. But when you get big, like you're saying, when you get really, really big, you kind of forget the flight is the action arm. That is the direct action arm of the United States Air Force at the lowest level. The squadron and the flight are the places where you have the most control, because it's not so big. Even 200 people is still really big. So, and the other thing that I'm going to kind of I want to prime here is just because you have access now, like we have access to everybody all the time. I got 4 apps. We were just talking about it before you got on. You got 2 phones and 40 apps and 10 email accounts that anybody, anytime can reach out. But that doesn't make you connected. That makes somebody have access to you. So what
Correct.
are some things that you're doing? Like we have this, we know that the small unit, that small team, when that flight room door closes and you're doing good things, man, it feels like the whole unit is falling into place. And then the whole world is starting to fall into place, right? It feels right when that happens.
Right.
So if we know that we have access, but not necessarily connectedness, and we know that those small teams are effective, how do you make a big organization feel like a small organization?
Okay, great question. So you're on point. I have I have some ways to get for people to have access to me and for me to try to encourage connectedness, but really you only get it if people take you up on the offer. And those are things like I have an Instagram for the 57th Wing Chief. I have a Facebook where I throw out, kudos to an airman that I met or something happened or informational stuff. I was posting stuff while I was at AFA so that we can keep the information flowing. And then as well as sometimes I throw down opinion, motivational type of stuff on there. We may mention later, I'm going to start up a podcast myself for the 57th Wing Chief as another attempt. But again, those are...
Ooh, that's a teaser, Chief. That's what that is.
Yeah,
we're just going to wait. Everybody just hold on. Everybody just hold on for that big announcement. That's what we call it in the biz, Kraken.
Yeah, just throw out a little teaser there, just a taste.
A little teaser. Something wet your beak a little bit.
So those are just, like you said, access. But one of the things I'm really doing to try to get to the connected piece, what I learned is, as a leader, I try to approach my leadership role like I approach my father role, my parent role in my family. I don't sit around and wait for my son to connect with me. I go to him. I say, let's go to the park and do this. Let's go do this. I go to him. And he comes to me sometimes on his own, but I go to him. Same with my 12-year-old stepson. The older they get, the more you have to force it. I kind of approach the leadership style like that. They don't have the time to come find me. And it's easy to get burdened down with, what you got to do behind the computer or go to this meeting or go to this TDY for the leadership stuff. But what I've been doing is I'll get I have a little golf cart and I ride that out to the flight line a lot in our wing then.
Oh no.
Did he hit? We're just going to, we're going to keep going like nothing's wrong. This is totally fine, Peaches.
This is totally fine. Things are fine. Things are fine.
This is totally fine. Because you know what I would do normally? Like if something bad happened on a mission like this, I would take a knee, I'd face out, and I'd hydrate, and I'd pull some security.
What would you hydrate with?
I'd hydrate with Hoist, obviously, because they make the little packets that go right into whatever it is that I'm drinking, typically some clean, clear, fresh water. No big deal. I'm a bit of a water snob. But if I put that little drink of Hoist, that little bad boy, I love the premix. They came out with the blue raspberry, which is my new favorite premix. That thing is fire. But the little packets are my fantastic go-to. The fruit punch, absolute favorite pack. It's Ivy level hydration, Peaches. It's approved by the DoD.
Yeah, and I mean, they're partnering with all kinds of folks. I won't spill the beans on who they're about to partner with because it's a big deal, but
it's a big deal.
Because I don't want to. Last thing I want is to get rolled in on by some kind of legal team or mess that up. Can you imagine if I'm the person that messed that up because I happened to bring it up? But I'm just saying,
you're just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be a good bro and help them out. And then I just torpedoed their freaking. Yep, just torpedoed their freaking $1 million thing.
But professional sports agency, yeah, tight. Sorry, guys. Hey, we really like your product. I will continue to buy from you every single month because I always do. But also, sorry about that deal. Anyway, go to drinkhoist.com. and check it out. Maybe use the code ONESREADY at checkout. Get yourself a sweet deal. The premixes are amazing. You can find them in shopettes and send a picture in. They always love when you tag them and you find a new spot where Hoist has popped up. So make sure to tag at DrinkHoist on IG. And then again, go to drinkhoist.com. Check out whatever it is that you want to do. Again, I love the powders. I love those little packets that I can just throw in my kit in my pocket anywhere. And then I have Hoist on the road. But the premix is fire too. So go check them out either at drinkhoist.com, at your local convenience store or grocery store, and then use code ONESREADY at checkout. Only online. If you just like are checking out and you look at the person checking you out and you're like, ONESREADY, they're not going to give you a discount at the store. It's only
you got to make sure
thing.
you do it like they do in ANS though. ONESREADY.
ONESREADY.
You know,
yeah, exactly. That's what you. Yeah.
ONESREADY.
Actually, you know what? Let's start a trend. The first person that sends me a video of them trying to get the discount code by saying ONESREADY at the checkout of a grocery store, I will buy you a 6-month subscription. I will personally do it. I will get you a case a month for 6 months. I will figure out how to make this happen. If you try to get, and if you somehow get a discount code, now I'm not talking about your card, right? Like if you already have a card at the place, that doesn't count. If she gives you some sort of like extra, like 10% off of that, you're in. I got it. And it's got to be solid. You got to sound off.
I mean, it's full extension.
ONESREADY price matching on the discount. Well, it was a good talk with Chief. You know, I hope he's okay. You guys obviously didn't take a tactical nuke out there because you're still there.
Yeah. I don't know. So it could be two things, I guess. Maybe like a phone call overridden. Oh no. He just hit me up. This phone overheated. I mean, it's Vegas.
Oh, you hate to see
it is outside.
It is Vegas. It is Vegas. But we can spend the time right now talking about that span of control and span of influence thing that Chief is talking about. That's a tough thing for any leader. And you know, the ANS candidates are thrown right into that right away, right? So span of control goes like this. Span of influence, span of control. They figured out that about 12 people, by the way, there's a bunch of studies that looked, about 12 people is about as many people as you can actually influence, right? You can control a lot more. You can control up to 200 people, 150 to 200 people is what they found. So why are squadrons 200 people, 150 to 200 people? Because that's about as much as a human with an appropriate staff can actually like control and point in one direction. But inside of that organization, you can really only influence 6 to 12 people, right? You can really only leave your mark on 6 to 12 people. So if you think about the way that we task organize flights and sections, they're really in between, those small platoons, really 9 to 16 people is what a platoon is. So when you start talking about flights that are, 25, 30 people big, that's just about right for a command team and then subordinate senior NCOs in there. And it becomes a challenge. The higher up you get, you have to figure out who it is you can influence that also has influence over their areas that you can actually like make things as clean as possible. It's a challenge that we fight every day and lose every day. I don't know what kind of experience you have with it, but it's tough. It's tough as organizations get bigger.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's science behind it. I would almost like, at least from my point of view, I think those numbers are accurate and they make sense. But I think it's part of it is just strictly based on time, like the amount of time that it takes to, engage with all these people. And I'm not talking about staff meetings. I mean, yeah, bear with me. There can be some good stuff that comes out of staff meetings, right? But I think they've got to be few and far between, and they've got to be regular and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's about time. So at the weapons school, we've got 9 different locations. We've got our locations on Nellis, but then we have, tons of units on Nellis. And then, we've got people in Spokane, JBLM, Whiteman, Barksdale, Dias, all over. Right. And it takes time to book a flight, or not just book a flight, but it takes time to book out, hey, we need at least 3 days because I got to fly out there, I got to engage, and then I got to come back, so Kraken, and then Command Chief, welcome back. We're just talking about the span of control and the kind of span of control and span of influence of numbers, and how being able to do that on a flight level or a squadron level, how that kind of would then translate to kind of your position as a command chief of the 57th Wing. Right. And I don't know how many people the wing has. I want to say it's like 3,500 or something like that.
It has 3,700 active duty, but when you tie in like all the total force, it starts reaching about 5,000.
5,000 people.
Jeez, that is huge.
And that's spread across, of course, all the GSCs with the weapons school, and then there's a few other GSCs on top of that, so it kind of spans the entire country.
Yeah, because we were talking about how, or at least from my point of view, like I'm sure there's math involved, or not math, science involved in like how many people you can influence and that kind of stuff. But for a lot of us, at least in a command team role, it is time. Like I just don't have enough time because I've got to take care of everyday stuff. I got to take care of the people that are, immediate, that ping you in the office, doing the drive-bys, but then also like there's only so many hours in the day, and you're doing your best to try and take care of everybody, but sometimes it's just impossible. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's impossible as much as it is challenging. And I think it all depends on what your perspective of taking care of people is, because I rely heavily on a team of what I call trusted agents. So all these group superintendents, SELs such as yourself, Peaches, are doing the same thing within their groups and their squadrons on down. And I trust that when I'm reaching out individually to different sections and units to help out when there's that they'll, and I repeated, it's probably more important actually that I connect as often as possible with group SELs, squadron SELs, and all those trusted agents, because they're the ones that bring me the problems that I can fix. And you mentioned time. One of the traps leaders with a lot of people behind them get into is trying to fix everything that comes across their desk. And really, you should only be doing the things that only you can do. So if it's something that only Chief Schaefer can do, then, that's what I should be putting my time in. If it's something that comes to me, someone comes to me with something, but Peaches is the one who can fix it. Peaches has the best knowledge. Then it's Peaches who should be doing it and not me, because otherwise I'm wasting my time.
How hard has that been for you though? Knowing who we are, right? Like man, yeah. I hear your words, Chief. And I would have to assume that you see problems that, somebody else could fix, but it's in front of you. So you see work and you do work. Cause I know, I do the same thing. I'm like, hey, this probably isn't a me problem. And I say that at work, often like, hey, I'm the op suit currently. So a lot of times I'll say, hey, this is probably not A3's problem to fix. This is probably the flight's problem to fix. How do you bridge that gap of not doing too much? Cause we hear it from, our, A&S candidates all the time. How do I show leadership without doing too much? What's that fine line between being a spotlight ranger and doing it so that people see me? And, this is really just part of my personality. Like with me, I don't necessarily care if I get recognized. It's not a thing that I require, for my person. I'd rather just do a job and then move on to the next job. I'm sort of like a military working dog in that sense, but we all have that inside of us. How do you deal in those leadership positions with knowing where that line is? Like, where is that line that you're like, okay, I got to know, is it a time thing? Is it an input thing? Is it, a feeling that you've developed over this time? How do you deal with that line of, okay, it's time for me to delegate this to somebody else?
Yeah. It burned me in the butt in the beginning, because just like you said, if the problem came across my bore sight, I wanted to shoot at it. So you hear leaders say all the time, I have an open door policy. And I agree with that. I started with that. Door was open. Come on in. I want to be accessible. I want to be approachable, or else I might miss something, so airmen would come into my office and they'd present a problem. And I'm like, their problem is now my problem. That's how I started out. And I still feel that that's our natural tendency. I'm going to go fix that. And almost never did someone bring me a problem I couldn't get fixed. Maybe I didn't fix it, but maybe I'm like, let me go find the answer. Let me go detective this out. And then I found a person who can help, and we get it taken care of. But what happens with that is all that bandwidth that might be better served dealing with a larger strategic problem for whatever level you're at is eaten into by issues that could be solved by a frontline supervisor and should be solved by like a frontline supervisor or CGO or something like that. So what I had to train myself to do, because just like you said, if I'm walking by and I see an empty water bottle, I'm going to pick it up and go throw it away in the trash can. I still do that, but when they,
I was like, I don't see you walking by empty water bottle.
Careful. You better not start talking about shopping carts. If there's shopping carts in the Smith's parking lot and they're not put away, yep. I got an Instagram account for you, Chief. You're about to get blown up.
I am that guy that collects like 8 people's shopping carts and puts them away.
You're safe from cart narcs today. Mark safe.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think I heard about that.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, Cart Narcs is our favorite. Shout out to Cart Narcs. I'm positive they listen to the podcast like the tens of other people that do. So I just want to say hi, guys. I'll put it out later. Like this would be a good soundbite. They are my heroes. Those guys are just absolute savages. Fantastic.
But what I've started to say is I don't have an open door policy. I have a screen door policy. And what I mean by that is you can see through the screen. You can talk through the screen. I can let the problems through the screen that need to get through the screen. So I have to train myself on this is what I call let's get to yes. You might come into my door with your problem and I will find a pathway for your problem. It might be me fixing it. It might be me getting with the wing staff to fix it. Or it might be me getting with Peaches or you to tell you about the problem so you can go get it fixed. Or maybe it's something like, starting a team within the wing to figure it out, depending on what the problem is. But I had to learn that our natural tendency is this, yep, give me that. Oh, you brought that to me. Therefore, it needs to be solved and I shall solve it. And it might not need your direct solving. You also might not be the best one to solve it.
No, that's often the case with me. Like that.
And
boy.
And always the case with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
sometimes not the case with you.
What I've learned about leadership, being a leader in a leader role, you're kind of a clearinghouse. That's kind of how I look at it. You're a clearinghouse for problems. You want to be accessible so people will bring them to you, but then you're the clearinghouse. You're like, let's bin these problems where they can get fixed, and then it's on you, of course, to keep the fire lit under the appropriate fire lit under them.
Yeah. Well, talking about keeping that fire lit and binning. I know I'm going to mess up the saying, but I'm pretty sure it goes, as the 57th wing goes, as does the Air Force. If I didn't mess that up.
As goes Nellis, so goes the Air Force.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Close.
Yeah. I knew I was going to
so
mess
close.
it up. Man, I had
You
one
did
shot.
great.
I got spaghetti on my
And you
sweater.
missed it.
So
If you had one shot, would you let it slip? I think you would, Peaches.
I did let it slip. So, Nellis is, leading the charge for the Air Force. And I think the rest of the Air Force understands that just based off the amount of visits that we get from, CSAF Brown, SimSAF Bass, the Secretary of the Air Force, there's a lot of senior leadership that come to Nellis just to stay engaged and see what we're doing, and almost provide vector checks as well. So, what is the 57th's role as you see it, or even Nellis's role as you see it in the Air Force?
Yeah, you know what? The boss just redid the mission statement, so I'll just read it to you because it's one of the few mission statements where it actually just says what the mission is. Train the next generation of warfighters for the high-end fight. And that literally sums up what 57th Wing does. If you can conceive of the advanced level training for whatever the thing in the Air Force is, that it happens at Nellis within the 57th Wing. And then, of course, Nellis is a much larger beast because it consists of so many entities like the Air Base Wing, which runs the base, the daily, logistical running of the base, which is enormous and
Yes.
immense. 99th
Huge.
Air Base Wing does all that. And then you have a few other entities on there that are all part of the team, like the NTTR, the Nellis Test and Training Range, which is a massive range. So it has its own wing level entity that runs it. And then you've got a reserve wing on our base that helps with the mission. And then, of course, you have the numbered Air Force equivalent of the Warfare Center, which owns everything that happens at Nellis, as well as other wings across the country that have to do with high-end training. And that's really the focus. It's the focus on if it's creating weapons officers, if it's learning how to fight better against China or Russia or any of those high-end threats, it's happening at Nellis. If it's some sort of tactic that was developed, it was developed at Nellis. If it's weapons testing, it probably happened at Nellis, or at least a part of it did. So yeah, preparing America's Air Force warfighters for the high-end fight is really what Nellis is, what the 57th Wing is all about, especially.
Yeah. And it's awesome to see all the different, I mean, like, I don't know that folks that are on Nellis or have been to Nellis understand this and realize this, but like for those that are coming in, you know, our demographic is 15 to 35, if you will, that are not in the Air Force. Like you have damn near everything at Nellis. You know, you have some mission design series or MDS, different kind of platforms that are at other bases just because we don't necessarily have the infrastructure. I mean, like Nellis is huge, but we're still limited on space. So we can't keep every asset here. But I mean, you know, when we talk about the high end fight, we're talking about 5th generation and all of that is here. And, and they are working hard, on the Nellis Test and Training Range, and then, you know, other ranges that exist around here. I won't name them off because it's a long list, but, you know, we're getting after that future fight, that pacing fight, and essentially leading the Air Force, at least in my point of view, at least from a weapons school perspective.
Yeah, I would say that we absolutely lead the Air Force, especially from the large high-end fight engagement aspect. We dabble in everything, but that's where we focus. And then the integration. Obviously, Peaches, you are highly involved in that piece. That's probably the biggest piece. The integration of all those platforms you mentioned and how they fight in the high-end fight together. And we do it on a daily basis, and it does not stop. It does not stop at Nellis.
Yeah, just as being a 58th alum, so I spent, you know, an assignment out at Nellis, and that was one of the things that when I left, I had a distinctly different, you know, picture of it. You know, when I got there, I was a young PJ. We were out on Area 2 and kind of away from everybody else. One, being back there recently and seeing how many things have just exploded, just in, you know, real estate, just in places that we, you know, inhabit and we work in. And, you know, we have our own test. We haven't even touched on, you know, the 88th test that actually tests equipment that we use in the field, on the ground, and how to integrate that into the bigger fight. And, you know, now I've always had good things to say, and it's Vegas, baby. You know what I mean?
That's right,
like,
yeah.
It's not bad. It's not bad living in Vegas and coming to work at one of the premier bases in the Air Force. So.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that you can stand on the runway or the flight line and just like look south, and the strip looks like it's 10 feet away.
Gorgeous. It's awesome. Taking off out of that runway was always the best. You already kind of mentioned it, Chief, but I want to talk about another thing that you've been heavily involved in, and that's the AFA. So, you know, you just talked about getting back. There was a big event. I'm going to let you go into it because I think, you know, there's a lot of value in the AFA. And again, it's taken a big organization and trying to become an intimate feel and trying to have that connectedness that you've been talking about. So it totally makes sense that you'd be involved in the AFA. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yes, we just wrapped up the 2022 Fall AFA convention this week. It was a record-breaking attendance, which is good. It means that the word is getting out there. And for those of the people listening who don't know, who are not active duty, AFA, basically the only two organizations that exist in the Air Force that lobby for Air Force interests to Congress are the Air Force Association, now called the Air Force Space and Cyber Association, and then the Air Force Sergeants Association. So if you're an Air Force member, I highly encourage you to join those two organizations, because your membership directly impacts the level of weight we carry on Capitol Hill when we lobby for, things like tuition assistance, or all the things that just were announced this week that the Department of Defense is trying to implement, that Congress has to end up ultimately paying for. But that association, it's a professional development association. It's a lobbying association, and it promotes Air Force initiatives and Air Force, where that convention is a way for everyone to gather and work on those issues and get the latest update on where the Air Force is going. Because, Chief of Staff speaks, the Secretary of Air Force speaks, CMSgt speaks, every 4-star in the Air Force is in one of the briefings or more, telling us updates on where global strike is going, what's the status of the B-21 project, what's next for NGAD, all those kinds of things, obviously to an unclassified level. But the biggest advantage to those conventions is the networking piece. You go there and you see old friends and you get to reconnect with them. You make new friends. You get to meet with top partners in industry, which I can't tell you how many times that's helped in the aspect war community, linking up with industry to help create a new pathway for radios we were using or kit that we have developed. In fact, I just met another guy that I think Peaches saw an email where I was making an introduction between another tactical kit developer and the weapons school, because he had something very interesting. So those are all kinds of things that happen there. And it's just broadening that network all the way. And then at AFA, it's to the tippy top level. It's a place where A1C Smith can, no kidding, meet face to face the CSAF, the CMSAF, the SECAP, the SEAC. Old Colin Lopez just dropped down by and photo bombed us while we were taking a group photo. Yeah.
But, he's a squirrely guy to pin down. Squirrely to see.
He is squirrely. But yeah, so it's probably, if you're going to join a professional organization in the Air Force, if you're only going to join one, I would recommend AFA.
Yeah, I've been to one in terms of the conference. I'll try and attend with you next year, but it was pretty cool because, like, for example, the SDAP thing, right?
Yeah.
That was brought up. That was a very hot topic. I mean,
Yep.
You told me, I got that text from you with all the aspect war, folks on it. It was just a simple text like, "Hey, SDAP's not coming not coming. It's that cut is not happening for anybody. Share it." And I mean, that level of communication was fantastic. And then, a couple hours later is when I see the news article that SECAF announced at AFA and that kind of stuff. But what I found very interesting is the being there, and you're right. You've got A1Cs all the way up to 4-star generals and stuff like that. But like, everybody's there to receive a message, to mingle, network, and receive a message, and be able to talk to senior leaders, and those senior leaders being able to talk to some of the junior enlisted airmen and kind of carry a message forward and see, almost get their finger on the pulse of what's actually going on to some degree, because how much are you really going to be able to do that at a conference as opposed to visiting a unit? But, I mean, I enjoyed it when I went, and I'm looking forward to going again.
Yeah, you're right. It's a great place to get touch points. You're not going to get deep in the weeds. You got 3 days. There's 1,000 people there. I think the attendance was, I don't know, it was through the roof. It was elbow to elbow. But in fact, there was somebody who saw a post I made and said, "Hey, I'm here too. We need to find each other." We never found each other. Yeah, we tried and we never found each other because you could get lost in the. But that's a good point. Like, it was an ALO, an F-15 Strike Eagle pilot that was my ALO 17 years ago in Fort Drum, New York.
Jeez.
That saw me, found me on, or didn't see me, saw me a post in Facebook, reached out to me through LinkedIn, and who I hadn't talked to forever. And, cause we weren't even linked on LinkedIn, but did the request, and I'm here, I'm there. And, it's been 17 years. We caught up over LinkedIn, but we never could meet up at the conference. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff you can run into. Our first sergeant from when we were, students at the weapons school, or somebody who was an ALO and a captain back in, 17 years ago, now is a colonel and a wing commander.
As they're bringing up some of these initiatives, was agile combat employment brought up at all?
It absolutely was. There was actually an entire brief. There was actually a very good brief. There was a brief on agile combat employment, and then there was another one on multi-capable airmen. The multi-capable airmen one was kind of run by the MAGCOM command chiefs, and their perspective, especially the PACAF MAGCOM command chief giving, and also the USAFE, because they were giving the lessons on basically in the Ukraine, how the Ukrainians are basically doing what we are talking about with agile combat employment on a small scale. And multi-capable airmen, because PACAF is really focused on multi-capable airmen and agile combat employment. So they gave us a good brief. The doctrine's out. There's a DAF man out there with the doctrine of agile combat employment. I actually one of my goals is to try to digest that into chunks to give out to the airmen to get the salient points that they would care about out of that. So that's something on my to-do list. But basically, it seems like we're on track with ramping up lead wing and all that kind of stuff for agile combat employment and the doctrine behind multi-capable airmen. And what is also becoming apparent is like China's worried about it. They're trying their own version. They're trying to come up with their own version of it. And as you would expect, it's not going so well, and it probably won't go so well. And that's because of the way they're structured. We talked about mission type orders, where we give, the commander gives mission type orders, but we're trained and empowered to go do. So when, in the absence of any other guidance, we continue with mission. Right.
In the absence of any other guide. Yeah, exactly. And that was, I love hearing the words of history ring through your mouth. There were a bunch of quotes that we took out of World War II as, Americans do so well without a plan because it seems like they don't have any plans going in. There's no way to predict what they do. But, that flexibility, in the absence of orders, we attack. In the absence of orders, we look around and we go, hey, this place sucks. I want to go over to that place because we're going to go do this. You don't call back home. You don't wait for orders. An E5 makes that call in the Air Force. And I know that go ahead, Chief.
None of our adversaries have that advantage where they empower their enlisted corps to perform like that. And and just like you said, we're empowered to do that. So when you don't do that, you get what you see in the Ukraine. You get convoys 100%. That stop on the road and they're just waiting. You get 16 general officers killed in combat because they have to go to the front lines to make anything happen because nobody can do anything. Yeah. So
100%. The people that look at Russia and Ukraine and say it's a logistics problem don't understand tactics at all. Like that is what that is. That's an NCO problem is what they got. They don't have a logistics problem. They got an NCO problem, and they still could never. And I know there's a joke somewhere in here about the Chinese trying to copy what we're doing, but it's not as good. Like the Chinese knock. I don't know how close I am to getting canceled. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to foul. Yeah, we're going to work on it. Tell you what, we're going to use our canceled episode to talk about something that you've got working, which is you guys are, you were talking earlier about coming up with your own podcast to get this stuff out there. And we know, I'm going to put this plug out here right now. Policy travels at the speed of social media. If you are not releasing things on social media to get ahead of it, I think we've learned that lesson over the last 2 years. I think we've seen enough times where senior leaders are like, well, I was waiting on this. Well, a lie travels around the world 2 times before the truth gets out the gate. And we need to be on podcasts and getting that stuff out. So what's up with that, Chief? Well, are you trying to get in this podcast game? You trying to be a competitor or what's up? Let me just ask
I wouldn't say I try to be a competitor. I think I'll be starting up a podcast for the 57th Wing the goal is that it sustains beyond my term as the Wing Chief. And the idea, I've decided on calling it On Target with the Bullseye Chief, since Bullseye, Target.
Great branding. We get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, trust me, we get it. No, that's good.
The whole idea behind the podcast would be keep it not 57th Wing focused to the point where we're only talking about 57th Wing stuff, but stuff applicable and interesting to the 57th Wing, population. Whether that's, no kidding, what's going on Nellis. Let's talk about this thing that's going on Nellis. Let's talk about airmen's life in the dorms on Nellis, but also what's going on in the Air Force, what's going on with leadership. That's what, similar to what you guys are doing. And that's the goal, is to maybe a little bit of passing information, because I also pass information through a lot of other venues, but more of a way to connect and get people to get other people's perspectives and maybe get them, prod them to ask questions and think about things.
Oh, and so you got the On Target. Actually, let me make sure I got that right. On Target with the Bullseye Chief. That's still be the podcast. What's your Instagram right now?
My Instagram
or is that going to change as well?
No, it says 57th Wing Chief, and in parentheses it says Bullseye Chief. Same for the Facebook.
Cool. All right. Yep. And I was just checking it out just so I could make sure that that I had the name right in case I needed to read it off. But yeah, you're already posting, you're already getting there, and the follower count is raising up. So we'll do what we can to help with that. I had mentioned earlier about the demographic that we have, and I'm going to kick it over to you, because for shooter's choice on this one, whether it would be advice, because we try and wrap these things up with like, hey, what's your advice to the people coming in? But due to your unique position and where you're at, maybe you're actually talking to the force. So do you want to kind of give advice to people that are looking to join, or advice to airmen and NCOs that are already in, or hell, why not both? Shooter's choice on this one.
Yeah. Maybe less of advice and more of a perspective. I remember being a young airman coming in. I was very focused on my singular purpose and my almost narcissistic pathway in life. I had it figured out, and I had no doubts in my mind. I wanted to go do this, and that's what I did. And I never looked back. But what I didn't do, I did not have a wide aperture. I had a very narrow aperture. I could have benefited from a lot of perspective. Maybe there would have been less frustration in my life. So I guess one of the things I try to do, and I would offer to those who might be thinking about coming in, who haven't joined yet, and those who have recently joined, this is coming from the opinion of someone who has 25 years in. There is nothing more important or impactful that you can do with your life than serve in the United States military. That might sound like an extremely biased opinion, and it is a little bit. But here's what I offer when it comes to that. Nowhere can you directly contribute to the changing of a course of history of a nation, or the protecting of this experiment that we have called democracy, which the U.S. leads. I mean, we were the first country to swear an oath of allegiance to a document that offered us freedom and our rights to every person in this country equally. The paper always did that. The country didn't necessarily do that in the beginning, and it's taken growth and time to bring that to fruition. It will always be a work in process, but the paper, the document, it always did that. We don't swear, we don't raise our hand and give an oath to a human like a dictatorship does. We don't vote in an election that's actually a fraud and keep somebody in power for 2 decades like Russia. We don't swear an oath to a monarchy or even a government. We swear an oath to that document that was drawn up. And we're the first ones, this country was the first ones to do that. When you think about what you can, as a high school graduate, 18 years old, contribute to and impact in the world, very, very few opportunities offer that outside the military. So when you're thinking about getting out, those are all good decisions. You know, maybe you put your time in and you've got other opportunities. You got to think about stuff for your family or other interests you have. Completely, totally valid. But if you're on the fence with it, or you're on the fence with joining, I give you my word that it's not a wasted life in the military. You will not look back, even if you had a terrible time, if it was really, really hard and you didn't like it, and it was a lot of sacrifice, which all of those things will happen. You can turn around and look back and know that even if you got one jet in the air, even if you got one airman to finish training, that one airman could be the next CMSAF, CSAF, ace pilot, whatever. You have made an impact bigger than you ever could almost anywhere else, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
Preach.
I mean, kudos to the folks that have, joined and separated. And I support the hell out of those folks. And I would do for those, we've got a friend of Aaron and I, he is a major and he's separating. He's a special tactics officer and he's just a phenomenal human being. And just being a friend, I will do anything I possibly could to help him out. And hey, thanks for doing what you're doing.
Too.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not conditional.
No, right. And it's not like you have to be in to get my support. That's not how it is at all. Thanks for serving. Really appreciate it. You've done some amazing things. Hey, best of luck. Same if you've done 30 years, right on. But the ability to travel, the quality of people that you meet, the experiences that you get to have, both good and bad, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the bad ones are more important because they will actually bring you closer together, especially when we start talking about that transactional kind of communications and transactional relationships. A lot of times, I think that is why, all three of us, have this AFSC war background, that have, all three of us have been through some very difficult times in training, whether it's, INDOC, the TACP pipeline, ANS, whatever, or even combat, those, sucky times, those bad times will help bind you even closer together than you would have ever thought. Even if it's somebody who maybe you don't even necessarily this person isn't really my jam, but we got in a firefight together. And so that's my dude now. You better not talk disparagingly about him.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to talk disparagingly about him. I tell this story frequently, but I had a friend that, our friendship was exactly that. We looked at each other and we're like, I would never hang out with you. I would never go have a beer with you afterwards. We are just that far at the end of the spectrum that we just don't do it. But I'll tell you what, I got so much love in my heart for that guy. I would never let you talk badly about that guy, whether he was there or not. I would never, to his face, I think one time he even said, Aaron, we don't have to get along. We're just here to get it on. And I'm like, okay, yeah, there's truth to be had in that. But those are the type of bonds that you develop. And I'll tell a quick anecdote. We had a young combat controller that just got out. And, he's been out for a couple months now and, he's living that life and, he's things, inside of AFSC war, they're really turbulent right now. And I don't know where we're going. I'm just going to get out and I'm going to do my civilian thing. He's starting the process to come back in. And it's not that he misses the guys. He misses that impact that you're talking about, Chief. Nowhere else in the world can you raise your right hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The only place that you can go and have an immediate impact for that end state to protect that Constitution and our God-given inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of freedom. All men are created equal. The silver frame around the golden apple, as you put it. There's only one place you can do that, and it's on this side of the fence. And it might not be pretty all the time, and it might suck, and it takes a lot of sacrifice. But you hit the nail on the head. If you're looking to do something bigger, I got a place for you. And it's not going to be easy, but man, I'm still motivated to do it, Chief.
It's worth it.
I can hear it in your voice. You still are.
I am. It keeps me going every day. I do love it.
That's awesome. Well, Kraken, unless you got any parting shots, we're going to wrap it up, and appreciate you joining us.
The only thing I'd like to say is I want to give a big shout out to you guys for having a venue, Aaron and Peaches, like this. It help anything we can do to help spread the word, and especially what I notice on social media is there. I don't know if it's just a natural gravitation towards a lot of, or if it's just human nature to highlight the negative. But what you see that get a lot more attention is like catchy negative headlines, and then all the negative trolling that goes beneath it with all the comments and stuff. But venues like this where people can actually, listen to ground truth data and connect with people that care. I appreciate you doing this. And then I also want to say thank you to all people serving in all of our nation's branches, doing literally miracles on a daily basis. Literally. When you get down in the weeds and see what human beings do for their job, and whether it's, a PJ TACP CCT type, or a maintainer on the flight line, or the dude working on a boat, or, the people in the DFAC, they're doing miracles. They're feeding thousands. They're hundreds of jets getting in the air and not crashing. I mean, it's just a miracle. And so you can just look at what Russia cannot do when they're trying to do their most high-end fight they've ever done in decades. And we do that every day without fail, like it's just normal business, right?
Yeah.
So I want to give a shout out to all of those and anybody in the future who joins. It is really, it's breathtaking to see what our airmen pull off on a daily basis.
And on that, that's it. I appreciate you guys joining us. I can't follow that up. Come on.
That's the one.
Like, what am I going to say?
Thanks for coming on, Chief.
Command Chief, appreciate you joining us. And I didn't highlight it at the beginning, but the reason why we've been calling him Kraken is because that's his call sign. So for everybody that's out there, like, what's this Kraken thing? So yeah. Kraken is Command Chief Schaefer's call sign. So that's where we'll go with that.
There you go.
Thanks,
you had to
guys.
wait to the end to get that one. That's good.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Have a good one. Later.
Later. Train hard.